Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking some college football. Less than 2 months away from week 0 action across the college landscape, and we're most certainly amped up for it as we're going to be taking a deeper dive on the Mountain West Conference today. More of a broader landscape of the league heading into 2026. So I'm going to dive in on the newcomers and, just overall where my preseason expectations are for each team. Let's just call it my Mountain West preseason poll because that's essentially what this is here. The Mountain West came out and said, we're not doing a preseason poll this year. So I thought this would be a really good episode just to drop out there. My opinions, my expectations going into 2026. Again, transfer portal, this revolving door with the portal, always kind of tough to speculate, right? I would say, maybe a couple years ago, much more easier to project and predict on what these teams are going to look like. But now that all these teams have new quarterbacks, new wide receivers, just up and down these position groups, it's very hard to, really speculate what we're going to see for the upcoming season. So, it's always an interesting exercise, right? But hey, we got new teams here. I just want to get everybody up to speed on what we're going to have coming up here for this season, along with, just our coverage on the league as a whole. We're going to be at Mountain West Media Days next week. So that'll be Wednesday, July 15th and Thursday, July 16th. So we'll have live coverage on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thesportsentiment, along with the live stream on my Twitter, Nick Urias _. So tune into that. That's going to probably be going on during the early morning out on the West Coast. So 9 a.m. we're going to probably get things started, and it's going to probably go probably towards, the early stages of the afternoon. I'll be sending out tweets. I'll send out updates on the YouTube, of course. But we'll be out there in Las Vegas. We'll be chatting with all 10 Mountain West institutions, their student athletes for the first day, and then the head coaches on the second day. We're also going to be chatting it up just with some people that cover the league as well. So we got a couple guests lined up for that. So live coverage. I mean, that's as good as it gets. I can't wait for it. It's always just fun to catch up with everybody out there, learn about these teams. And, that's the beauty of media days. I say to this all the time, what's the point of media days? Well, here's the thing. It's all about, I want to build relationships with the players, the coaches, just me as a broadcaster, that's, I feel like that's important. Right. But not only that, it's great to just, chat it up get different perspectives from, other people that cover and understand a certain team better than maybe I do. Right. So it's all about perspective. It's all about, hearing other people's opinions, on just the state of the sport and the state of these programs in the league. So, it's always fun to go out there and, I mean, come on, it's Las Vegas, Nevada. What more can you ask for, right? Great destination, to put that on, and very excited and very honored to be back out there. But today on this episode, we're going to kind of just go run the gauntlet here. It's not going to be too long. I want to keep it short and brief because we do have media days coming up, and I feel like we're going to get a better grasp on a lot of these teams in a week and a half from now when we do have our live coverage on this channel. So again, this is just going to be a short little exercise that we got today. And then we're going to take, a much more deeper dive on things when we're out in Las Vegas and live. We'll do more scheduling breakdowns and things like that. But again, this is just kind of my, I guess, early stage and preliminary research on what we have ahead here, for the 2026 Mountain West season. So let's get straight to it. This is essentially my Mountain West preseason poll. So this is number 10 to number 1. And again, this is not going to be correct. We're going to go back and look at this in December, and you're going to be like, wow, I was way wrong on one team. I was totally right on a certain team, right? It's all about schedules. It's all about spots and situations. A team in September could look a whole lot different in November, right? And of course, you got to favor in altitude and, injuries and all of that, right? A season can flip in a hurry. But again, this is all, just based on, what we have on paper, and games are not played on paper. They're played on the field. And that's, what makes the sport so great. But as a media head and myself, I wanted to put this out there just to get some more information out there, because I know everybody is hungry for some info when everybody's doing their preseason research. So let's get straight to it here. My Mountain West preseason poll. The league is not dropping one, just to put that out there. And I understand why they're not doing it. I mean, everybody, is going to have their own opinion and I guess their interpretation on it. But essentially with the G5, G6 college football playoff, at large spot for the best G5, G6 conference champion, I think this is just my opinion on it. You see a team like New Mexico that was 11th on the preseason poll, 11th out of 12th on the preseason poll last year. And they came out with Jason Eck in year one and nearly made it to the Mountain West championship game if it weren't for, the silly tiebreakers that the league has with the 3-4 way, whatever it is. And, we've seen teams, get screwed over with that a couple of times now over the past couple seasons in the Mountain West. So when you have a team like New Mexico who just comes in, shocks the world, hits the ground running, nails a lot of their portal guys and does a fantastic evaluation and obviously has a great performance on the field for several weeks. And they ended up shocking everybody compared to what everybody had them in early on in the preseason. And they go out and, you never know if they make it to the Mountain West championship. They didn't make it because of the tie-breaking rules, but let's just say they did and they win the game. And if you have that preseason poll out there, I feel like the committee could kind of use that against you a little bit compared if you're stacking somebody else's resume. Again, that's just me talking. But I understand why they're not doing it. I think right now it's just such a tough evaluation, just given where the portal is right now and just how much moving parts and how many coaches are jumping from one place to another and who's getting a new play caller. And it's such a challenge. And it's a crazy wormhole that we're going down here now just with the transfer portal and all the moving parts. And I understand why the league and why several conferences are going away from the preseason poll. Essentially, it's just another talking point for someone like me or somebody else that wants to talk about all these teams. Unless you're like a team that's picked towards the bottom, you may use it as a motivational angle. But I mean, like the preseason player of the year, and if you're projected to pick third or fourth, I mean, it really means nothing in the grand scheme of things because you still got to go out there and play the games on the field. So that's where we're at with that. That's where I'm at with it at least. But let's get straight into this. Let's go with number 10. And again, we'll have graphics. We'll break down the schedules here just so everybody can have it all in front of you. YouTube.com/@thesportsentiment. If you're listening to this on the audio side, got graphics so you can see all the schedules. So let's go straight to it. Number 10 with the UTEP Miners. UTEP, of course, first year in the Mountain West, making the transition from Conference USA, had a 2-win season in CUSA last year under Scotty Walden. Scotty Walden's entering year 3 out there in El Paso, and I feel like this is kind of a big year for him. The administration kept him despite the conference change and despite realigning here. This is a critical year. The problem is here, there is just not a lot of flash and punch from what I'm seeing on this roster. This defense was able to keep them in some games last year, and in particular against Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State, who both played in the CUSA title game last year. But their offense was just not powerful enough. That's why they brought in E.J. Colston from Incarnate Word, and we'll see how that translates. He led Incarnate Word to 5 wins last year, even though that was, somewhat of a flawed FCS roster a year ago. But the wide receivers, the running backs, like there was just not a whole lot of punch here. And just given the fact that they're changing conferences, there's just better teams out there. There's better coaches. I just think it's going to be a tough transition in year one for UTEP. They got wide receiver Cam Thomas coming back. He only played one game last year due to injury. This has been a guy that's followed Scotty Walden pretty much everywhere. Walden was a few years ago now was the head coach at Austin Peay, and Thomas was an Austin Peay recruit. And then once when Coach Walden went from Austin Peay to UTEP, Cam Thomas followed him to El Paso. So they need a healthy Cam Thomas if they want a dynamic offense at all here. They got Tavares Jones. I think he could be a potential impact piece here at the running back position. Was the backup at Mizzou in the backfield for the Missouri Tigers. So as you imagine, was the backup, didn't get too many snaps. He just wants a little bit more action here, and I don't blame him. They got Jaden Smith returning. He was an Eastern Kentucky product a couple years ago. They got Cash Cheeks coming in from Northern Colorado with limited numbers and production. So, like, you see where I'm going here. Like, UTEP is going to need a dynamite year defensively. They're going to need Colston to pop, and they're going to need a couple of these wide receivers to break out that we just aren't really maybe seen on the depth chart just yet. But again, you see the schedule here. Like Oregon State, I don't know what Oregon State's going to look like this year. It's a non-conference. But, like this schedule is kind of a gauntlet. And we've seen Coach Walden, mess around with some FCS teams as well when he was at since he's been at UTEP, right? I think like Tennessee Martin came into El Paso and won the game outright in his first year, right? I'm not saying Texas Southern's going to do that, but these are just that's a tricky non-conference. You're probably going to be 1-3 heading into Mountain West play. And then, you're going to have to navigate, look at that road schedule, just some tough games, right? Like the only winnable game I see on the road is at Northern Illinois. And you're probably going to be like a slight underdog in that game, right? And, Nevada, San Jose State, Hawaii, Wyoming, it's just tough sledding right now for UTEP. Big year. I probably see the Miners realistically like 3 overall wins this year. So that's where I'm at with UTEP. That's why they're projected to finish number 10th in my preseason poll here. Let's go to number 9 in the Northern Illinois Huskies. Northern Illinois's got one of the more gnarly schedules here in all of college football, just because they have 7 road games this year. There's not many teams that are playing 7 road games. And I mean, all the road games you're going to be an underdog in all of those. Again, if you're not familiar with the Northern Illinois situation, first year in the Mountain West, coming over from the MAC, a program that's got actually some really like good history, but they've kind of been on a downward spiral the past couple years. Quite frankly, ever since they upset Notre Dame 2 years ago, they've kind of just been declining since that massive win where they took over the entire college football world for a week. And again, like 7 road games, first year in the Mountain West. I will say this. Northern Illinois made a splash in the transfer portal this past weekend, bringing in Western Carolina quarterback Teron Dickens. And I think that is a very interesting pickup for a couple of reasons. Number one, he set the world on fire in the FCS division. For the Western Carolina Catamounts, had over 3,500 passing yards, a 38-2 touchdown interception ratio. My deal is with that is he's coming in so late, and Northern Illinois is already having an active quarterback competition with Jalen Macon and Brady Davidson. So those guys have been fighting out. They saw snaps last year, so they're already way ahead of things, and they have a new play caller this year, but how is Dickens going to come in here, who was an FCS quarterback star in 2025? How is he going to come in here on such short notice and find a way to see the field over those guys? I just don't see him starting in week 1. I would be quite honestly shocked if he started any time during the non-conference. And you see the schedule here, like week 1 at Iowa. Even the Illinois State game is like not a free win. Like Illinois State was the FCS runner up last year. They lost to Montana State in overtime, went on that crazy run the Redbirds did in the FCS playoffs. Going on the road at Tucson, against Brent Brennan's group, at Georgia State. That is, not the most prettiest road trip, right? And then you get into the Mountain West games. Like, I'm just saying, like, with an interim coach and him being defensive minded, I do think Northern Illinois is going to be a little bit more offensively dynamic than what we saw last year, because Thomas Hammock, he would just try to drown the offense, to the ground, just try to ugly the game up, rely on his defense, just run on 3 straight plays and pray they get a first down. I think you're going to have a little bit more of a field stretching offense here. They're going to spread it out a little bit more. They're going to take their shots. I think you're going to have a little bit more of a vertical passing game from what we've seen in NIU over the past couple of years, right? And, where they really keep the defense in front of them and really ugly up the game. Their home games, like UTEP and Hawaii, Nevada, like Hawaii, that's a far trip for you. Nevada, we'll see what they look like. Can you trust them on the road? UTEP and NIU, that's a swing game that I wrote down for the Huskies. If they want to, climb the totem pole in the standings from, at some point, right? Like these are swing games, but those road games are really tough. And the fact that you play 7 and that you're going to just have a longer road trip than everybody else because you're in the central time zone is rough. Like coming to San Jose, coming to UNLV, like it's just not going to be fun. And it's going to catch up to you potentially by November when you're playing all of these physical teams in the Mountain West, when you're playing the teams like New Mexico and Air Force, and, Nevada can certainly, smash it in your face when you go play them, right? Like I feel like it just might catch up to NIU. This is a really tough spot to be in if you're Rob Harley, the interim coach. I'm very intrigued on when we see Teron Dickens, especially if the quarterback play a subpar from Davidson and Macon. But we'll see how this whole thing plays out for NIU. That's why I have them at number 9. Just tough transition from the MAC to the Mountain West. Number 8, let's go to the Nevada Wolfpack. Nevada, again, has themselves a gauntlet non-conference schedule, just like last year. They're playing Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee again. They have themselves another, tough FCS team. I mean, even tougher than last year. They barely beat Sac State and Reno a year ago. And this year, who did they got coming into town? Oh, how about the Montana State Bobcats, the FCS champions in 2025? I would honestly say Nevada's going to be an underdog in that game. Like Montana State is really, really good. Like they got Justin Lamson, the former Stanford quarterback. They got Taco Dowdle. Like they got legitimate pieces, the Bobcats do. And that's going to be a really tough game for Nevada. And I know Nevada and Jeff Choate entering year 3 at head coach was the former Montana State head coach. But man, you catch Montana State at a really bad time, riding high from an FCS championship. Western Kentucky with their air raid offense over Tyson Hilton. I talked about this a couple weeks ago when we did our San Jose State scheduling rankings and kind of breaking down SJSU's schedule, that Jeff Choate has tremendous game plans and historically has done very well against air raid offenses. And you're going to have 3 air raid offenses on this schedule with Western Kentucky, San Jose State, and Hawaii, right? So I do think Nevada will come ready for those games. But at Middle Tennessee State is such a weird game. That was an all-timer last year because they were up 13-0 and lost 14-13. UCLA is going to be a tough game on the road in Westwood. Bob Chesney, the former James Madison head coach now, is running the Bruins for 2026. And Nevada's got a little bit more punch, I feel like, this year, doing some digging on their roster. This team does avoid Wyoming on the Mountain West schedule, which, it's always good if you could save yourself a trip to Laramie, of course. My swing games that I have for this team: at NIU and at UTEP. Those are 2 road games versus 2 the Mountain West newcomers. If Nevada can get both of those games and maybe split the Mountain West home games, you're going to be in a better spot than what you were the first 2 years under Jeff Choate. I think it's essential for this team to go 500 in the non-con, because I honestly could see 1-3 in the non-conference, just like we saw last year. So getting off to a good start for Nevada, hitting the ground running will be essential. I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback, because I don't know if that's decided just yet. They got a UCLA transfer coming in. I think Ethan Duncan. And then they have Carter Jones, who obviously got thrown into the fire as a true freshman and was on the struggle bus for the most part, commanding that offense in 2025 for the Wolfpack. I would say best group of receivers this year for Nevada, just on paper, they got Damian Morgan from Idaho State. Idaho State was a high-flying offense in the Big Sky last year. They got the Jason Doss from Towson, Donnie Cheers from SEMO, and Gary Givens from Northern Illinois. So you're seeing like Nevada's, they're recruiting a lot of these FCS guys that are just, trying to, level up to the FBS level. And that's kind of their recruiting strategy right now. And at this point in 2026, because this is a team that's gotten rated with lots of talent over the years, and Jeff Choate's accepted it. But critical year for Jeff Choate in year 3. This is kind of when he really gets it going when you look at his previous places that he's coached. And we'll see what the quarterback situation looks like. They got La Barrera coming back on the defensive line now, be huge. They got Larry Turner Gooden, the former San Jose State safety, with some experience as well. He was a high-priced recruit that ended up going to Texas early on in his career. So they got some high upside guys that have yet to seek the field too much, and on their second and third stop and looking to make an impact here. But number 8 right now is where I have Nevada, but I don't know. I could see a few more wins, but I can also see another disappointing season for the boys out in Reno. Let's go to number 7 on the Mountain West preseason poll, and that being the Wyoming Cowboys. Now, this could very much be a boom or bust type team here in 2026. I think it's, again, a lot of these coaches are entering year 3. Scotty Walden, Jeff Choate, Jay Sawvell for Wyoming entering year 3 as well. Year 3 is such a critical year because year 1, you kind of get the free pass. Year 2, if you disappoint, okay, it's kind of your recruiting class. We need to see you in year 3. If you get a year 3, really show what you're all about. And Wyoming did tons of makeovers on the offensive side. They brought in a new quarterback and they brought in a new offensive coordinator. And this is why I say Wyoming could kind of be boom or bust material, because we all know that Wyoming, regardless of who's calling their defense, they're just going to always kind of have the playmakers out there that kind of keep them in the game for so long, right? We've seen that under Craig Bull. We've even seen Jay Sawville, the guys that he's brought in, really do a good job at just keeping the Wyoming Cowboys in it, but they just never have enough offensive firepower, to get across the finish line for a victory. And Wyoming, why I say they're boom or bust is because of the offense. They got Christian Taylor at offensive coordinator this year, entering year 1 out there in Laramie. Came over from the Buffalo Bills, but he previously was the offensive coordinator at William and Mary. And they ran a bunch of creative stuff at the FCS level with quarterback Tyler Hughes, who was at William and Mary and transfers over to Wyoming. So you have this quarterback and OC chemistry here from a previous stop, and they're going to just try it at the FBS level in altitude and see where it goes. The deal is that they got this quarterback and offensive play caller, chemistry and tandem that's worked well in the past, but you got to have the playmakers to do it, right? Hughes is a great runner with his feet. He's going to extend a lot of plays. I think you're going to see a lot of RPOs that turn into some explosives. But at the same time, you're going to need some pass catchers as well. Chris Durr Jr. ended up hitting the portal. He's not on the team anymore. John Michael Gillenborg, their star tight end, ended up going pro to the NFL. Wide receiver wise, they kind of are just promoting from within. A lot of guys deeper in the depth chart in 2025 are, climbing the ladder here in 2026. Interested to see how that translates. Running game is going to always be solid with the Pokes. They got Sam Harris returning for his true sophomore season, and they got Markel Holman from Western Illinois, who ended up having a really good year for WIU. And again, we already know defense is going to always be solid. Ethan Solsatz, the linebacker, who I think is going to take a more expanded role this year, saw tons of time last year, but linebackers were really good for Wyoming last year. I think he's going to be one of the main catalysts for Aaron Bull's defense, and Jaden Williams on the defensive line, another player that returns. That's going to be a big part of what they do here this upcoming season. Some swing games for Wyoming, just in the Mountain West. They host University of New Mexico in November. That's a big game. Going up to Laramie in cold weather when it's going to be ugly and it could be snowing in the altitude. And if New Mexico comes up to par here, you never know. You could see Wyoming potentially scoring an upset in a game like that. Laradice, and especially in cold weather games, you're watching the college football slate on a Saturday. That will be a game that will be nationally televised. It'll be 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. local out there in Wyoming, and you could just totally see a potential upset brewing. So that's a game I totally have circled. Even if Wyoming's offense isn't as dynamic as what some of us think here in the preseason, I think it's a fascinating game regardless. They got the first Mountain West game of the season for Wyoming is versus Hawaii in Laramie. Tough trip for the Rainbow Warriors. Hosting Air Force, that has been a house of horrors for the Air Force Falcons. War Memorial Stadium out there in Laramie. And another game, just one of more, I would say one of my more fun, intriguing non-conference games is Wyoming going up to Central Michigan versus Matt Drinkal's group. I saw Matt Drinkal in year one. I thought he totally performed above expectations for CMU. Their offense is totally janky, right? They're going to run the ball 60 times a game. It's ridiculous. And they're going to very much play a possession type game. It's almost like playing against Air Force. They're just not running all that triple option stuff. It's very weird. It's going to be ugly. I could totally see that game being 10-3 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And Drinkal is an up and coming coach that people have yet to talk about from a national perspective. And I think he's going to take CMU to some really good places, but that is a tricky spot. I'm so glad that they're still doing the border war. That's a week 1 game on the road at Colorado State. So you already know college football rivalries, longstanding tradition, always important to the sport. And I'm so glad that they're playing that game still, despite the realignment in conferences. But Wyoming, boomer bust material to me. I don't know. We're going to see what happens here. I could totally be wrong about Wyoming, or I can have them just right. I need to see a little bit more from them on the road. And we just haven't seen it. Their offense may be good at home just because of the conditions. But, man, this offense has just been tough to trust over the past couple of years. It's just been so predictable. Even when they had, Craig Bull, they would just have, these tough son of a guns at quarterback, and it would just be so predictable. Yet sometimes they would just find a way to ugly it out. They'd go on the 2-minute drill with Andrew Peasley, and they'd, walk the game off. So interesting perspective here from Wyoming. They're one of the more fascinating teams heading into 2026. Out to number 6 with the San Jose State Spartans. And again, San Jose State, one of the more disappointing teams in all of America. When you look at where everybody had them projected in 2025 to the way it finished, one of the more disappointing teams. We've already talked about this numerous times on this podcast. This non-conference is very interesting. We've talked about it. We've done the scheduling rankings on San Jose State. You get the rivalry game versus Fresno. Week 0 back-to-back on the road at USC at Eastern Michigan, 2 games in 6 days. You get the tune-up game, or, the get-right game, if however you want to interpret it, versus Cal Poly, and a non-conference game versus North Dakota State. That is the last game of the year for both teams in San Jose State and North Dakota State. That game in San Jose. As far as the Mountain West schedule is concerned, helps, like we said a couple weeks ago, that you get New Mexico and UNLV. I got those as potential swing games. If San Jose State's right in the middle of the pack, which the middle of the pack is very tough to gauge, like you could flip these teams all around. I honestly thought you could flip San Jose State, you could flip Wyoming, and you could flip the next team that we're going to talk about at number 5 any which way in any particular order. I think it's that close with the middle of the pack here in the Mountain West. But the fact that you get the Lobos, you get the Rebels at home, I think those are winnable games for San Jose State. Like I said, if you could go 1-1, that would be nice. Like we said, with the Spartans quarterback still up in the air, more likely than not, it's going to be Luke Weaver, the Hawaii transfer. But again, still yet to be determined. Coach is going to make on decision, I imagine, relatively soon here in fall camp coming up. And again, for the Spartans, had a bunch of tough losses last year, a lot of one-score losses. Special teams was a disaster. They addressed it with Trajan Sinatra, the Idaho State transfer, who had a tremendous year for the Bengals at the FCS level. And the coaches have been very excited with his progress and the way he's been booting the pigskin. But we're going to see how this Mountain West schedule goes. Nevada's been a house of horrors for them out there in Reno. Hawaii, they're going to always be up for that game. UTEP, they voted for the kickoff online on Twitter, the UTEP fans. That is a late night game, I think on October 17th. An Air Force game is intriguing as always. Niumatalolo and Troy Calhoun are like 8-8 lifetime against each other. So those guys always have like smash mouth type games. It's an interesting schedule, right? And you would just think that if the defense could get a little bit better for San Jose State, even though they didn't make too many moves in the portal with it, like they're promoting a lot of guys from within, it can only get better from what it was last year. They were the worst passing defense in America. If they could get to the quarterback a little bit better, if they can tackle a little bit better, can they get off the field on third down? And maybe that turned into a little bit more luck from a one-score game perspective. Can you make your field goals? All of that comes into consideration. I'm really not worried about the offense here, because as long as you're not turning over the football, which is what San Jose State had last year with quarterback Walker Eaget, you're going to put up points with this spread and shred scheme. We've talked about this a ton if you've been following the podcast. So the offense is going to come together. It's just, can this defense take some strides, and can the special teams take any positive step in the right direction? And I have optimism that it will. And that's why San Jose State's at number 6 in my book. Number 5, let's go over to the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. And like we said, number 5, number 6, and number 7 with Hawaii, San Jose State, and Wyoming can all get, be interchanged, and you can argue either which way. It may just come down to the head-to-head amongst all these teams. Hawaii at number 5, they're returning the Mountain West Player of the Year, or Freshman of the Year, and Micah Alejado. Just a tremendously talented signal caller for Hawaii. They're very fortunate to have him back. He probably could have jumped to another school if he really wanted to. But Timmy Chang made it a priority to bring him back, and probably a good decision. Hawaii brings back Pofele Ashlock. They bring back Cam Barfield in the backfield for this run and shoot offense. Defensively is where I'm going to be very intrigued for this team, and I would say is where I'll be keeping a whole eye on, because this was the number 1 sacking unit in the Mountain West last year, and they lost their defensive line coach, Jeff Reinbold, to the CFL. You would think he's coaching the Ottawa Red Blacks now. That is a gigantic loss. And on top of losing your D-line coach, you lost a tons of You lost tons of defensive linemen, and you lost tons of guys in the secondary. So where is this defense going to be at? They lost tons of household names, not due to the portal, just because, they were out of eligibility. So it's going to be a lot of younger guys, and it's going to be a lot of guys that, that used to be with the team that ended up going portaling and came back. I know they brought in a couple guys in the secondary through that, path. So very interesting for Hawaii. Very similar to the San Jose State situation, right? They're going to put up points, but defensively, there was some times last year where Hawaii, their defense won them games under Dennis Thurman. And if this defense gets off to a slow start with this schedule, it's going to be challenging. And again, too, because they had so much punch with Alejado on the offensive side, there was just some games on the road where you would kind of look up at Air Force, at Colorado State, where it's like, holy mackerel, they're going to win these games. And normally they don't win those games in the mountainous regions on the road against those type of teams, right? Hawaii will normally allow like 35, or they'll lose the time of possession battle, or it'll just be some games where they lose the turnover battle. They won those games last year, and they ended up having themselves a tremendous season in 2025. Can it be replicated in 2026? Stanford's in a better spot than what they were a year ago. Arizona State, the good news is that you get some of the heavyweights at home, right? UNLV, New Mexico, North Dakota State. But man, that Hawaii to Northern Illinois trip is going to be gnarly. At UTEP in altitude, at Wyoming in altitude, at Reno in sneaky altitude. Those are just tough road trips for Hawaii. Would it shock me if they go 2-2 or 1-3 in those spots? No, it wouldn't. And I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see Hawaii, Jackson Harris at wide receiver, a gigantic loss. Who's going to step up beyond Pofele Ashlock in that offense? Very intrigued to see what that looks like. But more importantly, defensively for Dennis Thurman, how does he adjust with so many young guys that have just not had too much experience at the collegiate level when we get into Mountain West play? That's why this could be number 5. It could very well be number 7 in my book in the Mountain West. And then we'll climb up to what I would say probably tier 1 status for the league this year. And let's start out with the North Dakota State tier 1, tier 2. Maybe you could call it here for North Dakota State, just because they're just a fascinating team, making the transition from FCS to FBS. When they were FCS members, they had tremendous track record versus FBS opponents, but they were only playing 1 or 2 a year, like 2 at the most. Now you got to play FBS teams every single week. What is that going to look like? In the Fargo Dome, they're going to be really tough to beat. And quite honestly, when I see those Mountain West opponents at home, they probably going to go 4-0 in that stretch. And I don't think Jacksonville State or Fordham's going to come into the Fargo Dome and win there either. So I think this is going to all come down to what we have on the road here for North Dakota State. And again, the San Jose State game, we'll repeat it, is a non-conference game. So as you might imagine, the swing games are all the road games for this team, especially where we have Air Force, UNLV, and New Mexico, who we've yet to mention, right? And then you go to the island, early on. That Air Force game is very early in the season. And we're going to talk about Air Force here in a little bit here. But that is a swing game so early on in the schedule for North Dakota State and Air Force. And some news that came out on North Dakota State that came out after our San Jose State schedule ranking podcast. And that was that North Dakota State is officially eligible for bowl games and Mountain West Championship and the CFP. They were already eligible for the CFP, but the Mountain West Championship and a bowl game, North Dakota State is eligible despite being in year 1 of the transition period. They ended up getting the green light from the NCAA that you're good for postseason play, along with Sac State. But for North Dakota State, that's obviously big and significant for their postseason. They got something to play for. even more so down the stretch towards the season. This North Dakota State team is going to be very much ground and pound. They're going to rely on Griffin Empey, one of their offensive linemen who is an FCS All-American. He's going to be a high-prized player in the NFL, and that they're going to rely on him a lot. This is going to be a very physical team. They're going to be very good up front. They're piping in a lot of money into this program to get high-prized recruits. And North Dakota State, I mean, you saw it with Gray Zabel if you follow the NFL. This was a first-round pick offensive lineman, ended up having a tremendous impact for the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl run. So you're getting like blue-chip talent here at North Dakota State, and that's why they were able to steamroll through all that FCS, all those FCS teams, because there was just a tremendous talent gap, and that's why I'm amped up to see him here in FBS playing in the Mountain West. I thought it was a smash hit addition here for the Mountain West to add them, and I think everyone's going to figure out quick. That's going to be tough to win in Fargo, North Dakota. But the Mountain West games are crucial. Interested to see what that defense looks like. And Tim Polasek will have with Hudson Mays at quarterback. They're going to have it ready. Running backs are really good. Mobility at quarterback as always. And I think they're going to be very much a possession-based type team, but very, explosive. There are going to be times where they go down the field and have 80-yard run in 2 plays, like a 2-play drive that goes 80 yards, and it's going to be 2 run plays, and they're going to be explosive. And there's going to be times where they need to in the fourth quarter. They can have an 8-minute drive and really truncate the game. That's what I see from North Dakota State, and I think you'll get a stingy defense all year long in 2026. But road game's crucial for this team, as we mentioned. Number 3, that be the Air Force Falcons. Let's just put this out here right now. I do think Air Force has a very favorable schedule this year. They get North Dakota State very early on, like we said. Air Force plays the Duquesne Dukes in week 1. Troy Calhoun will not show anybody anything in that game in week 1 because he's got North Dakota State the following week. So that is obviously massive. It's a massive Mountain West swing game, and I think Air Force could have the upper hand in a game like that, especially that it's in Colorado Springs as well. But North Dakota State's going to go look at this Duquesne tape, and we're going to be like, we can't take away anything from this. So that's my deal with that. I think Air Force, I think that's a game that with Liam Zarka at quarterback and a very stout offensive line up front, we'll be able to get it done in a coin flip game type there. Air Force, I'm always interested to see them with their triple option, but more importantly, their defense this year. This defense and their secondary was not good. And now they're bringing back, as you're going to imagine, the same guys. A lot of those guys were underclassmen, true freshmen, true sophomores that were just getting a taste of college football action. And they got much better towards the back end of the season defensively. Those games versus UConn, and I'm blanking on another one. The San Jose State game, they were good defensively. If you just go look at some of the back end, the games in the second half of the season for Air Force, there were massive strides of improvement on the defensive side of the ball. It's just a lot of it didn't translate into winning. Troy Calhoun never has back-to-back bad seasons. I think this is your breakout candidate in the Mountain West. Like if you're going to go pick out 2 teams, I think it could be Air Force and Wyoming as teams that could surprise the league. I do think Air Force has Mountain West championship aspirations. Like the schedule sets up very nicely for them. The fact that they get SJSU and UNLV and North Dakota State at home, UTEP, first-year Mountain West member, I think they're going to be overwhelmed. They have the bye week early on this year, but then they're at Nevada. Like the fact that you get the bye week for Nevada, I think that's disadvantage for Reno. Like you're going to give Troy Calhoun an extra week of prep. New Mexico game will be a massive swing game, and we already talked about the Wyoming game on the road has been a house of horrors for them. That will be crucial. We all know Navy and Army are significant to them, even though they're not Mountain West games. The commander-in-chief will always be priority number one. But Air Force, as crazy as it sounds, with Troy Calhoun, he's been there for 20 years. They've never won a Mountain West championship. I think this guy's long overdue for one. I think that this might be there's potential this year for them to really make a Mountain West championship. My biggest question mark for this team, it's not the offense, not the quarterback. It's their defensive line, because they virtually got no returners on the defensive line from last year that played. Peyton Zadroik being one of them. Aiden Schwartz was another guy on the defensive line. Daniel Garobe, another guy in the D line. Those three guys were everything to them in the run game and, TFLs and all of that good stuff. They are not there. They graduated. Who gets plugged and played into that Air Force defensive line, and how did they react early on? I think we're going to know immediately if they can meet their match versus North Dakota State early on in the season in week 2. Massive, massive game that can flip the entire Mountain West standings. But that's where I'm at with Air Force, number 3 on the preseason poll. Let's jump to number 2 in the UNLV Rebels. UNLV, a fascinating team for 2026, because honestly, based on what we saw from Dan Mullen in year 1, if they could run the gauntlet here in this non-conference, they will be a college football playoff contender. And it's obviously they got to win the Mountain West. But when you have a game like Memphis on your schedule, with Charles Huff, who is one of the best G5, G6 coaches in the sport, I believe. And the fact that you get that game at Allegiant and not at the Liberty Bowl is massive. Memphis is going to be the real deal. So if you have that head-to-head versus the American, a team in the American that's going to be in the hunt for a championship in that conference, I think that is significant if you could get a win there. If you have a win, even if it's at home versus Cal, that's an ACC team, and you already know Cal, when they get teams coming to the West Coast, they're gonna upset teams, in their place in Berkeley as well, and it's gonna only help UNLV. North Texas, if you played them a year ago, I would have been scared to death with Drew Mestemaker and company, but that whole team departed for Oklahoma State in the Big 12. The one game that I'm going to circle here on the non-conference, and again, I'm just talking college football playoff, and I think overall it's going to be just the trap game. That's going to be the Akron Zips. And I know what you're saying. You're going to go look back at the Akron team last year, and you're going to be like, Nick, what are you talking about? This team was an absolute mess in the Mid-American Conference. But their quarterback is a well-traveled one and an experienced one for the Akron Zips in Reese Poffenberger. He lit it up for the Albany Great Danes several years ago, transferred to Miami, didn't play at all because Cam Ward was the man who won the Heisman for the Canes, went to North Texas last year, thought he was going to win the job, but then Drew Mestemaker came out of nowhere, and now he's with Akron. And this is his final year of collegiate ball, so we think. And I think that could be it's just such a weird game. It's such a weird game going on the road in Akron, Ohio. It's got the game like how UNLV had when they had to go to Miami, Ohio, and the game was off the rails a year ago. Special teams touchdowns, defensive touchdowns. Like UNLV had a pick 6. Tyrone Tracy's younger brother had a fumble. In like Kevin Tracy, he had a fumble in the red zone, and UNLV walked it off the other way. It was just one of the more ridiculous college football games I saw all of last year. I could totally see that at Akron. Okay, then you get into this Mountain West schedule. Obviously, the game that's going to stand out is, at least at home, is the North Dakota State game. Outside of that, I think this Rebels team is going to go 3-1. This UNLV team at home, at least. This UNLV team is offensively is going to be really good again. Sure, Anthony Calandria leaves for Nebraska, but they bring in Jackson Arnold, a former 5-star player that's going to be coming in here and really lighting things up. I think he totally fits in with the Dan Mullen scheme. They lose Jaden Bradley at wide receiver to the NFL, but Caden McGee's back. D'Angelo Irvin's back. They add Troy Stellato, who is at Kentucky last year and previously at Clemson. That's another high-price recruit that's still trying to footing within his career. Dan Mullen really did a heck of a job of taking those guys that have been on their second school, third school, these high-price recruits that haven't worked out, and he makes them into something. He did a really good job at that last year. And I think Troy Stellato falls into that category at the wide receiver position. They got Jet Thomas back. They got Jalen Glover, a great complimentary back to Jaden Thomas. Defensively is where I will be paying attention to this team the most, because they were not good defensively to start out the year. Miami, Ohio exposed them. Idaho State in week 0 exposed them. But as the year went on, they got better and better and better. The problem is that they're losing a guy at each level. Jaheim Joseph on the defensive line, Marcel McDuffie at the linebacker position, and Amaris Brown in the secondary. Brown and McDuffie made several plays for them down the stretch in the fourth quarter of these games. Jaheim Joseph was their sack leader on the defensive line. And, we talked about North Dakota State game on October 17th, I believe it is. But I think the game at Air Force will be crucial. They got the game last year versus the Air Force Falcons in Las Vegas, and it turned into a shootout, went into overtime, and Air Force lost the game. I think Air Force will be out for revenge in a game like that. Liam Zarka will certainly remember it. And I think when you just look at a game like that, when you look at a swing game at New Mexico, where championship game will probably be on the line if the stars align, for the Rebels, that will be a big game. And then you got to go back to back on the road after Albuquerque to San Jose. That could be tricky. Pivotal game on the road. First Mountain West game's pretty early for UNLV as well. Versus Hawaii. I think that's like week 2. So that's a pretty big one on the island. I'd imagine UNLV will be favored. And especially if Hawaii's defense is not right. Still trying to get the growing pains out. That could be a big one. I'd expect another a shootout on the island early on. Points galore. Offenses rule the world out there on the Hawaiian island. Big time Mountain West game to start the season. But Dan Mullen, who knows how long he's there for, quite honestly. Interesting to see how it plays out. Because year 1, he did a heck of a job. Year 2, I would expect more of the same, quite honestly. Offensively, they were so good. Defensively. And with this non-conference schedule, you got to take advantage of it. You could really be a player for the college football playoff if you go 4-0 and you win the Mountain West. Obviously, you got to see how everybody else plays out, and you got to throw the Pac-12 in there as well now. But UNLV, I see why that they're, a top 5 contender here in the G6 for a college football playoff spot. Just because the non-conference schedule has a lot of meat on the bone for some quality wins. And they got Dan Mullen just doing a hell of a job recruiting right now. Quite honestly, UNLV, very fortunate to have Dan Mullen. I think that only just goes to show credit UNLV. They're really caring about football now, and they're getting the right people involved. And obviously the players are certainly recognizing that, given the state of the talent and the recruiting that they're doing right now out there in the desert. And then number 1, and again, number 1, number 2 can be switched, but I just have to recognize the New Mexico Lobos. Jason Eck is just a head coach that is just built for the Power 4 level. And I think New Mexico here in a year or two, and again, 2 jobs that I'd pay attention to is Wisconsin and Colorado for Jason Eck. And I don't want to take that away from New Mexico at all, because New Mexico has done, their athletic department has done a tremendous job, football and basketball, over the past couple of years at just bringing in the right people to rebuild their programs in football and basketball respectively. They've done a tremendous job at bringing in talent. Coaching has a lot to do with that. But New Mexico, the fact that they won 9 games in year 1 under Eck, and the fact that they have the number 1 returning production in the Mountain West, I feel like you just have to put them in number 1. They should have been in the Mountain West championship game last year. They had probably, they beat the number 1 defense in the Mountain West last year in San Diego State. They passed the eye test versus Michigan in week 1. Like, there was just so much pop, so much creativity from this New Mexico offense that Jason Eck was scheming up. Jack Lane's back at quarterback. James Lobstein, their gadget guy, that got plenty of time on the field himself, is back at quarterback. Wide receiver is where I'm interested to see where it goes, because Keegan Thompson graduates. Dorian Thomas, their tight ends at Cal now. So I'm interested to see what the wide receiver room looks like, but they're going to figure it out. They're going to have the guys involved to make it happen. Scott Trey Humphrey is back for this team. They need him to take a big step. He was on the team last year, and Damon Bankston took over the starting role. Bankston's not on the team anymore. He graduates. They lose some players on the offensive line, but Eck's a former offensive lineman. He understands that position very well. I think they're going to be more than ready up front to bring it in week 1 versus Central Michigan. And then defensively, tons of blue chippers coming back at all levels. Mercury Swaim, Austin Brawley, just tons of guys that delivered for this team last year in so many clutch spots. Jackson Eck, their linebacker, who had over 100 plus total tackles and was the co-Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. He's back navigating this defense. And, obviously there's some massive swing games for this team, but, like their road schedule, like at Hawaii, will be interesting. San Jose State got them last year. I talked about the game on the road at Wyoming. Heck, we've seen from New Mexico as well that they can go and be a giant killer. They passed the eye test, like I said, in week 1 versus the Michigan Wolverines. And Jason Eck, when he was at his Idaho Vandal days in Moscow, he had Oregon on the ropes a couple of years ago. It was like 13-10 with like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And that was an Oregon team that made the college playoff that year with Dylan Gabriel. So, that was a game that they almost won. He won at Wyoming, like 2 years ago, before he took the New Mexico job. What I'm trying to say here is, don't be shocked if they're in it in Norman, Oklahoma for 3.5 quarters. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And again, they won at UCLA as a double-digit underdog, back when the UCLA stock was relatively high still. My point is that Jason Eck's the real deal. He's got returning production coming back. I value a lot of that in the preseason. And, their returning production translated into 9 games last year. So that's why I have him number 1. And again, like, you get North Dakota State in Albuquerque. That's going to be big. Like, Air Force coming to you is massive. UNLV obviously coming to you is noteworthy. And I think they'll have their way with UTEP. Obviously, the rivalry game is going to be always interesting with New Mexico State, but New Mexico State under Tony Sanchez just doesn't have enough firepower, I think, when it's all said and done. New Mexico, they would be my favorite to win the Mountain West if we, just from an on-paper standpoint, and if we started it today. I think Eck, along with Dan Mullen, and, you go down the list, those are your best coaches in the Mountain West. And I think Jason Eck, maybe at the end of the year, depending on what happens with Wisconsin and Colorado. I say those teams because Jason Eck played his collegiate ball at Wisconsin, was a former offensive lineman for the Badgers. I think he'd love to go back to his alma mater. And number 2, for Colorado, he's got a relationship with the old athletic director in Fernando Lovo, who is at Colorado right now. And who knows what happens with Coach Prime. Has been falling below expectations. It's starting to fizzle out a little bit for Coach Prime. It was It was booming in year one with Shador Sanders. But after that, like if they have another disappointing year in the Big 12 with the new athletic director, I could see it. And Eck is interested. You never know. And it's a power job, even though it's in a tough Big 12 conference. But I hope New Mexico can keep them because they deserve it. And they've made tremendous hire after tremendous hire. And, they've just have kept getting rated. And the talent is there. And Albuquerque's a great town. I got family out there. So they deserve it. The city deserves it. And you see, when they are competitive and they're winning, the fans will show up. You see what they do for basketball, and football's got that same buzz once again. So that's where I'm at. That is my Mountain West preseason poll. And again, the league will not be dropping one, so don't expect one, as we already touched on. But that's where I'm at. Just wanted to give kind of my thoughts with the Mountain West and just my preseason projections and trajectory and where I see teams coming from right now, heading into 2026. Again, it's not going to be right because we see it every year. A team disappoints, a team comes up and shocks tons of people. Right. And that's why we play the games on the field, but can't wait for it. We'll be out for Mountain West Media Days next week. And again, keep an eye on the social media platforms, Twitter, this channel, youtube.com/@thesportsentiment. Like and subscribe because we're going to have tons of Mountain West Media Day coverage on Wednesday, July 15th and Thursday, July 16th. That will be out in Las Vegas. We'll have player interviews. We'll have interviews with the coaches the following day. We'll have some media folks joining as well that, just covered the sport and covered the Mountain West and within specific teams as well. So I'm very excited to bring that to everybody. But that's where we're at, and we're excited for the season. Season will be here before you know it. And I think we're going to get a little bit more amped up when we're out there talking to the players and coaches in a week and a half from now. But that'll do it for me here on this podcast for this episode. We'll be back very soon in a week from now from Las Vegas, Nevada. And as always, I'm your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.